script, or you just want me talking in and making gibberish sounds so you can check your audio quality? I started off with a granola bar. There you go. Pretty good. You don't want to hear the rest of what I had for lunch? Is that I had a shrimp Louis salad for lunch. I had someone brought you. I don't mean to indict the
Okay, you can all resume your conversations.
So anyway, Lolly has been switching the votes around, like what they wrote at Gunsy Miniflex.
Right.
He then took out like Cal, Levonsky,
Yeah.
you know, and he made 4s.
No.
And so Evan
see you.
wrote in
Did
his
you get my
8
message?
even now. I
Yeah.
wrote here, but
Thank you
states,
very much.
like it states,
Yeah.
they wrote
I
together one
responded.
time.
I was on. It was in a text.
You know, so he's
Thank you.
gonna vote, but I mean, you know, I mean, Joe Satriani is in that vote, but it's more Jamie versus
Yeah.
So Evan's more bummed. Evan's like, I am like Val. I am always going to be Val. So whatever the 8 is, I'm in the Val. So I don't know how much of a chance they have. I mean, I guess we're going to Jamie. Yes.
Yours is 360-6849. Yeah.
Right, and then you got all the schools that are up there
Right.
based on.
I know, and the more money they got, they're all paying for.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's usually on the Catholic schools, like Bishop this,
Yeah, yeah, right. Bishop Ireton. I don't know. I guess they, because they can, right?
Camp Stoner, Camp Meadow,
I don't even remember all of them, but I know what you're talking about.
yeah.
Yeah. And they all have fancy boats that are painted in matching colors.
Yeah.
But that's okay. The bad news bears. Hey Steve, how are you? We can continue talking about the costume because it's probably going to be the last meeting. I'm trying. Oh, great. Actually, he's actually doing some stuff right now, like way far away. It's great. It's right now. Because he can't start until you're a freshman. So you don't have to have been playing soccer on the travel team since you were 3.
Yes.
Right. So in individualized coaching, it's from like to make the team. No, it takes a ton of skill, but it doesn't. I mean, all of the teams like it'll give you instruction. You know, what do we? I mean, like soccer and swimming. Yeah, all this stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Calling this meeting to order. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I'd also like to recognize some honored guests that we have. We have Jeff Waldstreicher, Emily Shetty, and Jared Solomon. And we will be first giving the oath of office to our newly elected council members, and then I'm going to hand the floor over to all of you, because I think you have something special to do this evening. All right. So if I might have the newly elected council members up to the front, please.
I worry about that.
I think I have to speak into the mic. Is that right? Can you hear me? Is that enough? Okay. If you gentlemen would be over here, what I'm going to do is each give you your oath. You might have this memorized by now. I think we have to swap here. Let me have that. Let me have that slip while I have to read along with you. Or else. Stephen. What we're gonna do is we're gonna read it.
In the round.
No, we're gonna read it together. Would you like to do it in the round?
I should say, we should bring some fun to the whole
I
thing.
didn't practice for that, but I could, well, it's all one running sentence.
All right, most is good.
Yeah, most, but just when you get to your own name, say your own name. All right, okay?
Do the other part,
Yes, everyone, all right? Okay, and your right hand up, please, for the oath. Okay. I
Stephen Piskowski,
do swear
do you swear?
that I will support the Constitution of the United States and that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to the state of Maryland and Constitution and laws thereof, and that I will, to the best of my skill and judgment, diligently, faithfully, without partiality or prejudice, execute the office of council member of the town of Garrett Park according to the Constitution and the laws of this state. I hereby pronounce, appoint you to the council. And congratulations. We'll sign these afterwards, okay? Thank you. And if Jeff and Jared and Emily, if you'd like to come in, just please use the mic. It's the only way we get the recording on tape, okay? And gentlemen?
Well, thank you, everyone, for having us this evening. Our state delegation represents 8 municipalities, and that's one of the best parts of our job. It's the most municipalities in any legislative district in Montgomery County, and being able to interact with the council members and mayors of each of those municipalities is a tremendous amount of fun and challenge in our job, and it makes it all worthwhile. So with that, each of us will present a citation on behalf of all of us to the newly re-elected council members. So the Maryland General Assembly, official citation, be it hereby known to all, that sincerest congratulations are offered to Stephen Pazakowski in recognition of his re-election as council member of the town of Garrett Park, presented the 6th day of May, although it's not the 6th day of May, I think that's when this was printed, by your District 18 delegation. Congratulations.
And Phil, no surprise, the text on ours is, this one is the same, but just wanted to, again, extend congratulations and thank you for your service.
And Dan, this one is for you. Congratulations. Thank you.
I don't have anything to add other than we are here for you. Anything you need, please don't hesitate to ask. And I know we all pretty freely give out our cell phones, so call us in the office, call us personally, whatever you need.
All right, and thank you so much for coming. That was really special. Appreciate it. Okay. Oh, would you come? All right. Jeff, will you come? No, I'll talk to you later. Remember when he came last time? Well, that was very special and totally on their own, members of the District 18. They contacted us, and we were more than delighted to have them come. So that was great. Okay, opening remarks. Let's see, I wanted to give some special thanks and shout out to the very nicely conducted election. We had some great assistance from election judges and poll workers, town staff, and even other residents who helped out with the reception party that followed the next day. And that was great. You may not know, but we started the counting of the votes at about 8:35, give or take. We finished around 11 p.m. And actually it went pretty smoothly. We do hope maybe we can create some further efficiencies for next year. We're even looking into the possibility of a scanning machine, but it's all just, possibilities. We're not set on anything at this point. As you know, there were 477 ballots out of a potential 870 qualified registered voters, and that's about a 55% turnout. It's one of the best we've had in recent times. It's great. I also want to give a shout out to the Garrett Park Historic Preservation Committee and the efforts they went to make the Richter home tour such a great success, insightful, educational, and just fun. It was an incredible turnout. I don't know if there were a couple hundred people there or something like that.
200, including all the volunteers.
Right, and I think out of maybe some 25 homes or so, there were 8 on the tour, something like
Yeah.
that. It was just really nice. It was a great community effort, just to see all these residents and even folks from outside our town and the Richter family. I got to speak with Mark and Alan. Mark and Tom. I didn't get to speak with Eric, but they were all there and they were thrilled. Anyway, I just want to give a shout out to that. That was a great effort, and for everyone who opened their homes to the tour, it was also really nice. And you might hear a little more about it later. I think that's all I have to say. So here are, to start, we have the approval of the agenda. Are there changes to the agenda?
Are we doing the field inspector services contract, or is that?
No, thank you for
Okay.
bringing that up, Jane. We don't, we're not ready to bring that forward to council yet. We're still working on negotiating price. So that is struck. Any other changes?
Just a super minute thing on the town hall renovation planning. I'll probably update just historic preservation committee in general.
Okay, and not the town hall.
Well, including town hall.
Okay, including historic preservation.
I'm not sure if that really matters, but for the agenda.
Okay. Does anybody else want to make their own personal update changes? Okay. All right, with those 2 changes, the agenda is approved as is. Next are the approval of minutes. I believe we may have had a few.
Question on page 3. I don't remember
Got mine.
talking about it specifically last night. I'm not sure if this is really, or last time, I'm not sure if this is technically something that matters for the minutes, but it says street paving goes from Strathmore to Oxford. Is that, I was curious, is that the Oxford block that goes to Montrose or the Oxford block that goes to the school?
So street paving right out here is on Kenilworth.
Yes,
So it starts from Strathmore and it goes to Oxford.
but
So
which intersection of Oxford, the short one or the long one?
This
Right here.
right here, this short one where it
Intersection
intersects with
Kenilworth.
Oxford.
Yeah, there's a section between the 2 Oxfords.
Oh, no, it goes to the closest
the-
one.
Oh, not the farthest, not the
No,
one
I don't
where it
think
has
it's
the
the
heavy tracks
farthest
at
one.
the school.
No,
I didn't
no,
really think
we-
about it before, but
right,
that makes
no.
sense to go
Yeah.
to the far one.
Thank you. We did actually talk about that, and, I mean, we were aware of that with the school and all that, so it stops before you get there.
Okay.
Because from that point forward to the next intersection of Oxford, that
Mhm.
section was done all the way to the back, to the end.
Okay, that was done
We
recently.
did
Yeah.
that section, I think it was 2 years ago.
Okay, so we're in good shape.
Should be.
Should be. Any other changes?
I wasn't at the last
Yeah, we'll
meeting,
talk about it later.
and I don't have any changes, but I wonder, there's an item here on the committees that talks about funds will be used for digital signage in post office lobby, and I wonder what digital signage in the post office lobby means.
Would you like to
Sure,
address that?
and I would actually propose a change there, which might help with that, which is I would change the word will to may.
Okay,
But what is the concept?
Sure, so the concept is potentially, and some form of interactive signage board. There's several ideas that the committee that we've still been keeping around, but for example, potentially a, 50-inch, essentially flat screen that could just be the town website, but it could be touchscreen and interactive, and so that way, the way the town website always has like the upcoming notices and things like that. so that folks who may not think to check the town website, it would be just a kind of a contemporary way to have a digital platform so we can be pushing information out to folks who come in and out of the town and post office.
The reason I ask, and it's sort of you might appreciate it, other people. As we all know, digital presence has a carbon footprint. Any activity you make available to people online means that there's a server running somewhere 24/7. That means that there's greenhouse gas emission taking place to support those servers. And my concern is one of balancing the need for information with being environmentally responsible and being a good steward of carbon emissions as a town. And nobody wants to talk about this issue as far as, everybody says go paperless. Well, when you have a paperless document, it sits on a server somewhere that runs 24/7. Whether anybody accesses it for the next month or year or 10 years is irrelevant. It's there sucking up carbon. Emitting carbon. And it's just, I'm really concerned about what we do as a town that goes against the grain of being carbon responsible. And it's not a criticism, it's an observation, but I want us to think about it.
Great, I'm totally on board with understanding that, and I'd be happy, I'm the liaison for that committee, to say that'll be one of the filters that we look at to understand that impact.
Or just say we commit to going wind power, or we commit to going wind power to make all of those possible.
Well, that's what went through my mind as you
Yeah.
said it, which is it's probably not an issue of one screen,
Right.
but really an issue
It's a
of,
server somewhere.
right, of potentially all of us thinking about
Right.
the overall
Right.
town,
Right.
what the town purchases
I think
electricity.
that the town is already on
We're on wind
100%
power.
wind
We're
power,
already on
We have
yeah.
been for about 10 years.
Yeah, we are on wind
Yeah.
power.
But it's, again, I just wanted to be an awareness, because the fact is that all the wind power, if we increase our footprint of wind power that's consumed, it's not available to somebody who needs to light their house.
Yeah,
That's all.
noted.
I just want to have a discussion on that, or
You
be
know,
an
I
awareness of-
always will engage on environmental topics, so that's a good one. And then Andrea, you okay with just changing that word will to may? I think it's still, that was the
Yep.
conversation, I just don't want it to sound like that we had green lighted it.
Yeah, okay, good.
One other small thing was on town updates under Historic Preservation Committee. Describes the house tour, and I may have described it wrong last time, but the tour was on Weymouth, Oxford, and Claremont. It definitely wasn't on Montrose. I don't think there was anything on Keswick either, so we would just clarify that for
Yep,
the
I'll include
history
this version that you had sent, the corrected version, in the minutes, and then I'll write corrected
Okay.
in it.
I didn't have a chance to go back and check myself. I can't remember if there was one in Keswick or not.
I did, because I was
You
curious.
did? Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Was there?
Oh, I listened to the recording. I didn't,
No.
sorry, I
Oh,
didn't know.
okay.
I
No,
wouldn't,
there
I'm not
wasn't.
sure on the tour.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right, it was Weymouth, Oxford, and Claremont.
Okay.
Right. There's no Keswick, and there was no Montrose, just, there was Claremont. And we'll just say corrected within the minutes here.
Did you also want some of the other corrections that you'd sent over?
No,
Do you want
that's
me to
all-
run through them?
That's all I have.
Okay, so do you want to include design by Alexander Richter?
It's not really that important. I don't think
Okay.
I said it, so.
Okay. And then the other question would be on, okay, let me just go through these maybe in order. So for page 1 of the minutes, Hans had pointed out, and some of you have this in the version that you're looking at, but it should say under unfinished business, under variance hearing, the second to last sentence should be Councilmember Schultz made a motion to grant the variance. So that would be one of the corrections, or it may be in the version that you're looking at already.
Yes.
And then the next one, did you want corrections there? Stephen, for
The
tax
next one?
rates?
Next action item? you
Yeah,
mean?
for the first action item?
Yeah, I'm not sure it's that important, so just
Okay,
let it
just
go.
let that go? Okay.
Wait a second, just reminded that they need to decide.
I
I'd
just
still-
proposed discussed.
I still
instead.
would stick with discussed.
You want discussed in there
Yeah,
instead of reminded?
I would go
The
with.
council discussed that?
For
Right.
local property tax rate? Okay. Did you want to include the insertion there?
I just, because it was proposed by the mayor, that's why.
It was by the
Why not?
mayor and the town manager.
It's like
but-
you made a
Yeah.
recommendation that we discussed, that was all.
Yeah, I mean,
I guess it makes
No.
sense to put that in.
yeah,
too.
it does, I would say.
Okay.
put it in.
So we're putting it in?
So we're putting it in.
And it'll be mayor and town manager.
Mhm. So right now, for changes, I have from ordinance to variance, putting discussed instead of was reminded they will need to decide. The insertion of by the mayor and town manager. On the second page, under committees, may be used for digital signage instead of will be. And then on page 3, including the correct homes on the home tour in writing corrected. Are there any other changes?
You got the streets on the tour.
Right, yep. So Weymouth, Oxford, and Claremont. Right.
Yep.
Okay. Are there any other changes? Okay.
Yeah, I don't have a change. Again, I was not here. But I was struck by the discussion having to do with committees and the diversity circle and expanding that and putting $4,000 into the budget without any kind of spelling out of the criteria that should be used to determine whether or not the town should fund an activity, and what, if so, how. I think if there isn't a specific set of criteria established, then one council may decide to do one thing, and another council may decide to do the opposite thing, based on how the presentation is made. And I'm not trying to be critical, I'm just trying to say, if we don't establish criteria for how we and when we, as a council, support a non-town activity, and that doesn't sound right, they are all town activities, but, what are the criteria under which somebody qualifies to, or the council should weigh the idea of giving somebody financial support? And we don't have to solve that now.
Sure, and I actually think that's essentially the conversation we had.
Okay.
So what we did in the discussion was to say, we weren't sure if we should, I don't think we were ready to sort of select one
Okay.
thing and
Okay.
say yes.
Okay.
So we said, let's do the lump sum, and then
Okay.
essentially pushed exactly what you're saying, as now we have that obligation to figure out what we will say yes and no on, and then
Yeah, yeah.
document that.
Okay,
So
good.
I think you,
I'm glad to hear that.
yeah.
Good.
I think also that 4,000 was actually, I believe, the total estimate
No,
of
no, that's-
all combined,
Yeah, that
other
I-
committees, the Neighbors Helping Neighbors.
Yeah.
There's, the Citizens Association was asking for assistance for the 4th of July, so there was a lot of that,
It
just so
just
you know.
gets us into that gray area
Mm.
of what do we support as a town and what do we not, financially, I mean,
Oh, sure,
so that's all.
sure, and that
And if we
diversity.
get, if that could be the next work session, we could have a discussion on that, that would be great.
Well, the Diversity Circle was part of the Martin Luther King commemorative
But it's
committee.
broader than that, is it not?
Well, it is, but that's how it got started.
Yeah, no, I
And
understand.
I think there were some great ideas to see if we can roll it in, if maybe the Citizens Association can sort of absorb that as an activity, that might be once a quarter, or once a year, once every 6 months, something like that, so that it
Okay.
doesn't have to be just by itself, but it is, I think, a great activity for the town to actually be part of or promoting, however way we promote it, because,
So what's our protocol? How do we, so I think we're, well, at least I could say, I would be in full support of us developing a simple criteria.
Yeah.
What's our process for that? I just don't know the process. Like, do we look at Andrea and say, like, does that go on our homework list? Meaning, does it go on your homework list? And then you write a criteria and propose it? Do we put it on the agenda for work session? How do we go about that?
I personally don't think it needs to get approved, by a resolution, like we would do with amending an ordinance or something like that. I mean, I think it would be a policy document, right?
Yeah,
Like we
yeah,
have our
yeah, yeah.
procurement policy
exactly,
or any
yeah,
other
yeah,
kind of
exactly
policy.
like that,
So,
yeah.
you know, I think that if someone wants to volunteer to take a crack at it, then we could, you know, all put our input in. But Hans, to your broader question, I think the discussion really did center around, you know, we do have a number of community organizations and activities that contribute to the town.
Yeah.
You know, there was a proposal for the diversity circle to receive funding, and I think that the conversation was just a broader recognition that, you know, we should have a process and we should have an ability for different groups to, you know, receive some small amount of funding to support. But I think we just need to develop that policy.
I have no
So
argument with
who
any
wants
of
to
those.
raise their hand
I
and
just-
take the first crack
It's
at
just,
it?
you know.
Well, how did
it's
we do
open-
it, you
It's
know?
kind of open-ended now, and
Sure, there's been some, you know, the Neighbors Helping Neighbors. When I was on the council, at one point, that was not funded, but now we do fund it a little bit. So now it's all part of this line item 12.4, you know, so. But I think it's worth you know, talk about. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if there's other committees. I think we have in this one also,
Film
the
Society?
Historic Preservation Committee, we actually have
That's a
money in there.
separate thing.
Is that a
That's a
separate
separate
one? I
line
can't,
item.
right.
That's an
Oh, there it
ordinance.
is. We added a new line, yeah.
But that's. but
That's not a
the
mayor's
Historic Preservation
proposed thing.
is a committee established by the town council
Sure.
to do town work,
Sure.
period. We should fund it.
Sure, and you know what? We have never funded it. We've added
Yeah.
a new budget line item.
Yep, and I saw that,
So-
yeah.
There we go.
I think to solve this, we probably could figure it out at a work session, just come up with a simple process. Maybe there's a way,
Yeah.
if somebody on this table wants to propose like a certain thing, go into a certain group at a certain time, so 4th of July is coming up, maybe we have a way we can all
Right.
discuss it offline in advance of that meeting, not have to propose it, and then
Right.
adopt it at the next meeting, but maybe there's a way we could
Well-
all, you know, make our
Okay.
thoughts known and then
Cool.
agree or disagree on what to do, and then I guess it could just be funded and then it would go on the manager's report. That would be my guess at
Okay.
how it might work, but I think we could,
I mean, one
work
of the
through that.
things I think the council, we've all tried to do is not to try to nickel and dime the operation, but what I'm hearing more, aside from the funding aspect, is just the policy of how do you establish if something should be in this to get funds as needed, because it's not precedent setting. We're not trying to, and we've made a statement about that, that no matter what funds are given to the special line item for any special committee, it's not necessarily precedent setting that they would count on it every time, so.
Well, I'm happy to volunteer to take a first crack at it, and I can solicit some opinions
that'd
and
be
work with
great.
Andrea, and, you know, and again,
That'd be
just
great.
going for like a, sort of a simple policy doc
Yeah,
that provides a guideline and some framework. Okay.
thank you, Dan, that'd be great.
Sure. I'm here to serve, Khaki.
Thank you.
It's just a small correction.
Mm.
In that same paragraph, if the annual art workshop is the youth art workshops that Susan
Mhm.
runs in the town hall, it's a 2-week
Where are we?
workshop. There's annual youth art workshop.
Okay, where are you?
It's under committees,
Yeah, second page.
1, 2, 3.
Annual
It's the 5th line
youth
up from the following.
art workshop.
Got it. I'm sorry, and what is that supposed to say?
What's wrong?
just insert youth after.
Can't hear the
Oh,
mic.
Elizabeth, you have to go to a microphone. Or I can repeat it.
Yeah, please, that would be
So,
great.
under committees, on the second page of the minutes,
It says ID.
changing it, right. They can't hear you because you're not at a mic, so I'm repeating what you just said. So it'll be the annual youth art workshop,
Mhm.
corrected in the minutes.
Thank you. Thanks for catching that. Okay, so that was a discussion all for the approval of minutes, which took us a little bit over to the budget side of the house, but are there any other changes for the minutes? If no, is everybody in agreement with these minutes as amended?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, okay, that's, and Stephen, did you agree? Is there everything?
I'm good.
Okay. And Hans, did you say yes? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I wasn't here, I don't know, I didn't
Well-
hear the discussion, I, you know.
Okay,
it-
all right.
I'll say yes to the things I talked about.
Good enough. That's all right. I mean, there's always a case that you may know something here
No, I,
to make a
You said-
change. Okay. Minutes are approved as amended. We have, the next item is presentations by residents. Are there any residents here who would like to make a presentation? If you do, you only have 2 minutes. No, I'm kidding, I'm kidding. You can, no. All right, we will move
That's a
on.
first. I don't think we've ever.
All right, next item on the agenda is action. For action items, and we have 2 action items. One is the adoption of the ordinance for FY '20. We introduced this ordinance at the last town council meeting. And the second action item is the adoption of the resolution based on the county's hazard mitigation plan and their template resolution. And both I hand over to Andrea, town manager.
Sure. Okay, for the FY '20 budget, this is a recommendation to adopt the FY '20 budget as presented to you today. This is the same as the introduced version that was adopted as amended at the April Town Council meeting with one minor exception. There was a math error to correct it. Line 17.0 was increased by $7, and line 21.1 was decreased by $7. If you looked at it online, that's what's highlighted yellow. In your packet, I don't think it showed up.
May I just commend your CD here?
For diligence.
Yes.
The revenue is projected just under 1.5 million at 1.484926. It is proposed that the real property tax rate for Garrett Park increase from 20 cents to 0.2045 per $100 evaluation, that the personal property tax rate remain $1 per $100 evaluation, and that the FY '20 municipal refuse collection fee remain unchanged at $330 per household. For operations, they're estimated at 1.263499. There's also a proposed transfer of $216,666 to capital and $4,761 to the reserves for the wind case. The total proposed capital program budget available is $1,425,680.
That's as of today.
Yes, as of right now. That's correct, yeah. It's an important distinction because other projects that we have that are obligated aren't on there right now. So this is just,
Their
yeah, moment in
expenditure-
time.
Right, expenditures aren't there, so that
Yes.
balance will go down.
Anything else you want to add?
No, that's good.
Are there any questions, discussion?
Can you just tell me the math error again, or is it not on this?
It's, yeah, it was corrected on the version that you're looking at, but the version that you're looking at, line 17.0 was increased by $7,
Okay.
and line 21.1 was decreased by $7.
So this is on the contingency side. And the upper transfers.
Question, so in the be it further resolved, and there's 3 of them in a row, where it talks about, mayor has discretion to move funds among subcategories of any major category, provided it's 3 business days, because I think we changed that from 3 days period to 3 business days. That actually came up, like 2.5 or 3 years ago as an issue we all discussed. I'm just curious, it says explaining the need for doing so, such changes shall be reflected in the next monthly financial report. So what if the mayor proposes something, or a mayor proposes something, and the council doesn't agree? Can the mayor, or what's the, I'm not sure if we really need to record it in that document, but I'm just wondering what happens if there's not an agreement on doing, like moving a budget? Because the 3 business days came before, because it was trying to keep things from moving around too much without having a discussion about it.
So this has been the language that we've been using for years.
3.
And What?
Like 3, I think.
No, this
I remember
goes back.
Phil was the one that changed it the last time.
Yeah,
To
but
say
no,
they had to
that,
be given
But
to
I
us.
think the central language, we've been using it for about 5 or 6 years.
yeah.
Okay.
It's been going on, right, and the part that Phil had changed was on the capital budget, so we don't have
Mhm.
discretion to move anything there, except I think it's on the Safe Routes to School project line,
Mhm.
which we had allocated 40, something like 22 and 18. But on the operating budget, yeah, as Hans says, this, and I was on the council too for a while,
Mhm.
so this has been going for a while.
I remember
So
it coming up
we're-
again like 3
you're-
years ago,
Stephen, it's
or 2
within-
years ago.
Within category.
Yeah, it's
not-
within the
the
major
total
category.
can't change. What can change
Yeah.
is, at the mayor's discretion, is funding within category.
Yeah, I remember that from when we discussed it like 2 years ago. I
Yeah.
guess, I guess that's all right.
Yeah, I think, I remember this discussion, because I think, it's a valid question, and Stephen, and I believe it's come up almost every council meeting, every
Every-
year for this
yeah, every-
adoption, but I remember the former mayor saying, at some point, and I know it's a trust issue, right? But at some point, you need to have some flexibility for the town manager to execute the budget and manage the operations in the way she sees fit.
Mhm.
So, if there's a little bit of overage or underage, there's room to move the money. It's not like necessarily going over into some brand-new idea, I don't think. I'm just kind of
And-
putting it out there like that.
I also think as a matter of policy, I think the reason that the notice is in there is, as Mayor Kaki says, that discretion is needed, especially if something comes up, but, if there was some huge issue, then it can be discussed at the next council meeting then.
Right.
And, it's not reflected here, but the council could say, let's look at the bigger picture, let's, figure out what we need to do to get things back to some, other state. So I think, I don't think it needs to spell that out necessarily, because that's inherently part of the council's power as, the appropriators, but I think it balances that need for flexibility with, a more general need for discussion at the council level, just so we can all understand what happened and, figure things out in the
Okay.
meeting
Yeah.
context.
And if there's any, consolation, the policy, procurement policy that is, what is it, 12, 13, no, 16 years old? Or something like that. Still, requires 8,000, anything above 8,000 to be brought forward to the council. So it's not like
Mhm.
this is where you're trying to avoid
Yeah.
the nickel and diming and the penny
Yeah, and I don't want
transfer
to
monies.
get into that. I just remember it coming
Yeah.
up 2 years ago, and I remember some
Yeah.
comments coming up with it, trying to put some sort of a, like
Yeah.
a
Yep.
policy around it. So-
Well, and so this is the language that's been used for a number of years, it's the
Okay.
same language.
Actually, I got
It's okay.
a logic question here. So how do you not, if you adopt it at the .0 level, but then you move money into it, you've now just changed the amount that's in that.
So you're not, you're moving money among the subcategories, you're not exceeding?
I'm sorry, if I use the second, be it further resolved, that you can move a total of 1/2 of the adopted level of the operating capital budget contingency to any category which does not violate the above provision of adopting the budget at the major category. So as soon as you move from contingency into, what's his name,
This
you've
is
just
true.
blown that.
I know, I've thought of that, and yet this has been the same language we've done for years as well.
Well, that doesn't mean that
It
it's
doesn't mean it
right.
shouldn't be changed, right, but I've thought of that, we've talked about
You're
it.
just always giving 3 days notice at least, right? At the core, whether you're doing anything with contingency or whether you're changing sub-items within a.
Yeah, but I think that it would be,
How would you propose it differently?
that's what I'm trying to quick think.
So I guess, can I
Do you
clarify something,
Oh,
Phil?
sure.
So you're essentially looking at the language, which action inherently does not violate the above provision
Right.
of adopting. So I guess there's 2 ways to read that, right? One way could be sort of as a statement, this action does not violate. Or you could say, you could look at that language as do not violate, right?
Yeah.
So that's I think the question is, which is that meant to be? Like, this is, a statement that this will not violate, or this is a command. You
Right.
can't violate by doing this.
To me,
So-
as an engineer, I read it as a command, thou shalt not violate.
Right,
Um,
well, yeah, it is
but-
somewhat ambiguously written, so I guess the question is, what should it say?
So what does the act do? The act does, as Phil points out, if we take no more than up to half of the contingency at any one time, it certainly could be less than that, to transfer it into another major line item, and that's either in the operating budget or the capital budget, we are exceeding, thereby exceeding the originally or more recently adopted major budget line item category. You know, whenever that, you know, we do that several times a year, you know, mid-year and so forth, so
But I guess I see
which way?
the need for the flexibility, because if for some reason we've got a budget at the major category level that is not sufficient for the needs of that major category level, you know, it seems to me that we shouldn't have a contradictory interpretation that says, well, you can use the contingency, but actually you can't, right? Because then
Right.
you're violating the adopted at the major category level, so.
Can you strike?
Yeah, I don't see why not.
And I'd like to.
Because that's the whole point of a contingency, right?
Right.
You use
Right.
it as a contingency for something just happened that we weren't
And-
anticipating or predicting.
So if you were to strike from which action all the way down to .0 level, and you just had to go from any category provided the mayor shall inform, then you wouldn't actually violate the thing
Right,
anymore.
right. I mean, again, this is only talking about the contingency part of the
Well-
budget, not everything getting
Absolutely.
thrown up in the air
True, but
to a
some-
major category.
Some
or-
smart aleck like me comes up and says, well,
Well,
you just blew your own ordinance.
Yeah, again, you know, since both of them have the 3 business day prior notification, that does give the council an
That's right.
opportunity
That's
to
right.
weigh in and then discuss it at the next meeting, or, you know, if something is really crazy, then say, you know, whoa, we need to discuss this right now, so.
I'd also like just to highlight something, so people, we actually had this happen maybe last September, with the Arboretum and the contract with NRD, where we had under budgeted the category for the townwide Arboretum plan, and we needed additional money, 15,000, and that was taken from the contingency and actually put into that category.
Oh, and I'm not arguing that point.
Yeah,
I think
no,
it's
I
all
just-
fine. I'm
to
just
bring-
saying that
I
if we
think-
strike this, it will
Right.
make it
Yeah, I think it's
cleaner.
ambiguous and it doesn't add to the,
I wanted to give
only
adds to
Dan
the
some
right.
background on, you know, how that kind of
Okay.
thing works, so.
Yeah, I'd be fine with striking that, because I don't actually think
So you're striking it
adds-
from the,
Which action, all the way up to the .0
Zero
level,
level.
Yeah,
semicolon?
that dependent
Yeah.
clause,
So, okay, right. So,
bracketed by commas.
okay.
So Phil, two years ago, you added this thing about the 3 business days. That was really just the capital budgets then, or was that operating too? Or do you not recall?
I think it was for both, and I would just assume leave it for both.
Excuse me.
What's that now?
I think.
And
all of
I'm fine with
notification.
leaving it both, yeah.
I think it's, because it's just a notification. I mean, just send out an email that says blah, blah, we just
Yep.
want to do this.
Well, I'm not, would you connect the dot there, Stephen? You were asking Phil what?
I was just
exactly?
trying to recall, there was discussion like 2 years ago, when we had a work session about this, when there was another budget going through, and the language came to us without, it was just saying that the mayor at that time had the discretion to move within the 0 line. It could move anything within there, and then we put that notice in there at that point.
Right,
So,
but we
yeah.
struck the one provision for the capital, so we cannot move any money.
Right.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
So I'm fine to stay with that,
Yeah.
so.
No, I think it was just the question was about moving stuff around, and it's just, you
Okay.
give notice. It's 3 days, give notice, and,
Right.
you know.
this does say capital, though. Are you clear?
But that's just the contingency.
This is for the
part.
contingency only, yeah.
The one above it is just for
And the
operating.
one above is just, right,
Got it, okay.
right.
See, See, Phil, I think you're thinking like a lawyer, not an engineer.
Uh-oh.
And
No one's-
just for the history, so, and the decision was made when you wrote that language to not give the mayor and the town manager the flexibility on the capital budget.
Correct.
And what was the reasoning of that?
Because we invested in certain capital projects and we've set up money in certain ways, and we wanted to make sure that when we set them up, that that's what we had money for. You don't want, in strict theory, I suppose one could actually defund the project by moving all the money out of it.
But within the zero level, like if we're talking about subline items, I'm just looking at
Right.
the capital account. Like, for example, right now, if Andrea realizes she needs to spend a little bit more money on IT equipment and a little bit less money on phone equipment, she can't do that.
It's true.
It's,
And again, that's why I'm asking to understand the
Without
history.
council
But-
discussion.
if it's,
I don't
Right,
think-
so the issue is that lines like 26-3, the SRTS project, have so much money in them.
Right.
Huge change could be made. I'm just get wrapping my head around it, right?
Right.
Okay.
So
I think part of it is also that, I think in operations, obviously things will fluctuate in the categories within within the larger category.
Mm-hmm.
And there needs to be the flexibility, we have to have a council meeting for each,
Right,
for
just
each
to manage
decision.
it.
Just to manage it and
Yeah,
be
have a
smart about
discussion.
it.
Yeah.
As
Right.
opposed to a capital fund item, where the council have spent time discussing it, informing the budget, it should be taken more seriously when we make a commitment to work on a project and get it done this year with this amount of money.
Clear.
and to your point, she would be able to, Kaki, you know, the mayor would be able to move some contingency in to take care of the overage if you had to spend more money on a particular category. And then at the mid-year, you could always readjust it back again.
Right, I actually, I mean, this is a great discussion, and Andrea and I had kind of mentioned this during the FY20 budget work session. So there's a couple things to even think about, not that a decision has to be made. We can come up and address this again, maybe at mid-year or something, but just a couple things to think about. One, there's nothing that says by ordinance that we have to maintain only 40,000 in a contingency, especially on the on the capital. So that's something to think about, and I'm gonna get to another point about why that's relevant. And the other is, we've talked about how some other municipalities, rather than approving a capital budget, the only thing they approve are capital projects, because the trouble with this capital budget, we don't really have specific projects outlined. We have. Yes, right. And so what they do is, and this goes back to the idea of maybe whether increasing the contingency on the capital, is we can put a lot more excess there instead of having all these sub-items and so forth, and you could still adopt at the major and maybe just get rid of all these other line items, I don't know. But things to think about that give some flexibility, and even start looking at different ways to actually manage a capital project versus a capital, budget
But this
program.
Also, I'll just counter to say that this is also a policy document. It's also a policy that we intend to invest in whatever these things are in some form or fashion. And we've kind of drawn a line in the sand by saying, this is how much money we wish to allocate to it. And there may be cases where we're saving money in the line until we finally get to enough money to do whatever it is that we want to do.
And that's exactly where I was gonna go next. I mean, none of this says for sure that we're gonna spend all this in this fiscal year, and then if something pops up, of course, where we may need to draw upon something else, we'd have to wait, come to a council meeting, and then do a two-step meeting to even be able to move the money. It's just a thought, I'm just
Definitely discuss.
giving you
Yeah,
guys
it's
things.
worth taking a look, especially if we can get some examples of
Yeah.
other towns that do it that way for a
Yeah.
workshop and look
Yeah.
at it.
Chevy Chase Village is one of them.
From the sublime to the trivial, could I ask a favor on, under capital, subcategory 32.2, could we please make stormwater one word? That's how it's
Never know
referred
which way to
to.
go with that.
Yeah, I'm
I've seen it
sorry. It's
different
my,
ways.
my frustrated
Okay.
red pen wielding English teacher coming to the fore, but that's generally how the literature talks about it.
I'm opposed to
Because
that.
otherwise my eyelid will
I
twitch
just can't,
every
I
council
can't
meeting.
support that, Jane.
Come on, you're the one who wants to do environmental. We've got to get technical.
Okay, we gotta learn how to spell it right.
Thank you. I realize that's my,
Okay,
Little
was there any
bugaboo.
other change on that?
you see, we have it right here on the agenda.
We change it, we are changing it, okay, on the
It's probably
ordinance.
been sitting like
And
that for
then there's
years.
one change in the budget.
It's newish, actually.
Okay. All right.
Andrea doesn't make spelling mistakes, so it had to be there for,
Had to be me?
no, it had to be, I said it had to be there for years, so.
Must have.
Of
Clearly.
course, right. Okay, any other changes?
That's what I've seen.
Would anybody like to make a motion recognizing the changes that have been suggested?
I move that we adopt FY 2020 capital and operating budgets as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. As amended.
As amended.
Thank you for doing that. Would you like to take the next one?
The next one? Yeah. Okay, so this is a recommendation to adopt the resolution that would adopt the Montgomery County Hazard Mitigation Plan. So to provide a summary about this plan, it was developed by county agencies, regional partners, and 19 municipalities. The goal is to reduce or eliminate long-term risk to people and property from hazards and their effects. It is an update to a 2013 plan that we adopted in 2014. The plan, this current plan was updated between December 2017 and September 2018. The meetings in Garrett Park were held with the then town manager and County Office of Emergency Management staff on February 23rd and March 13th of 2018. And there was a county public forum that was held April 16th. If you decide that you'd like to flip through it and see some of the more pertinent parts of it, Chapter 4 includes the mitigation action plan. All of the actions relevant to Garrett Park in this section are carried over from the 2013 version of the plan, so nothing new was added that impacts us, that has our name next to it. Also worth noting is that local governments must have an adopted hazard mitigation plan to receive hazard mitigation grant program project grants and other non-disaster related mitigation grant assistance programs. Plans are updated every 5 years to continue eligibility, and a list of these types of grants are towards the end of Chapter 5 in the plan. This plan has already been approved by MEMA, FEMA, and the County Council, and our resolution language is based off our 2014 resolution adopting the 2013 plan with some revised language to reflect the updated plan. And I did get confirmation from county staff today also that this does not commit the town to anything. It is more of a wish list of what we would like to do, we being the county and the towns. With that, anybody have any questions? I know, Jane, you had one suggestion, some suggestions for language too.
Just as a substantive question, so this is essentially an ongoing 5-year updating cycle. Has the town done anything differently or implemented any of the recommendations from previous plans like the 2013?
Not that I can tell, but I think that some of the current stormwater projects may get at some of the things that are referenced within it. So I think that we may be able to show some progress in the next plan.
Okay. I mean, is there anything in there that we really should be forward-looking and saying, you know, these are good policies or good
Yeah, no, I think there's a
projects
lot.
that
I think
we
there's a
should try
lot.
to implement?
Yeah, I think there's a lot in there that, of course, is good to take into consideration, and it talks about, different kinds of risks and the relative likelihood of those risks, and then there's places where either all jurisdictions in the county or specific jurisdictions talk about how they will be involved in specific ways. There's Well, you looked through it as well, Hans, I know. There's nothing that
skimmed-
sort
I
of
s-
jumped out at me, though.
What jumped out at me is that it's essentially, when they talk about hazard mitigation, they're essentially talking about weather incidents. And I thought that was pretty superficial. I didn't see anything about what you do in the case of hazardous spills along a railroad
It
track.
specifically, when I looked at it,
And-
it specifically says it does not, and it's
Right,
only.
and it seems to me from the town's interest, I would think that would be a higher risk potential than stormwater or weather. I mean, we might be out of electricity for 3 days, but that's not, it's a nuisance, it's not a hazard. And so I came away from, I skimmed the report because it's only 207 pages or 208 pages long. And I skimmed it, and I was, I guess, underwhelmed by the executive summary. And I just felt that there wasn't anything specific. I don't know whether we contributed any. I looked at the town's file related to this, and there was a form in there that had never been filled out. And I think that was probably a 3 or 4 year old form. Maybe, I'm guessing I didn't see the date on it. But I didn't see anything that either required of the town or volunteered by the town or expressed by the town any kind of role it could play or would play in the case of some kind of a hazard. And in the absence of that, this, to me, is a sort of meaningless document. And maybe that's being a bit too severe, but the reality is that we're not really committed to abiding by county regulations or by having a role to play, or a defined role even for us on what we should do in case of a severe weather hazard. I just didn't see anything in there.
Thanks, Hans.
That doesn't mean that I spent 45 minutes on a 200-page document, so.
Oh, I'm very sorry. What the heck is that?
The one thing I asked Andrea, and that is being passed up and down here, is that there is a possibility of funding for
Yeah,
stormwater.
And I
And
think
that's,
whatever we do on stormwater, we have to get the county involved in order to make sure that we protect our position in soliciting potential funding for any of the projects. And so we have to be a player within their rules, and we have to make sure we understand their rules so that we don't lock ourselves out of potential contributions for financial contributions by the county for stormwater management. And to me, the classic example of that is we have a stormwater problem at the base of Kenilworth, end of Rokeby, base of Kenilworth. You can stand there and look at it and say at least a third of the water does not come from Garrett Park properties, and maybe as high as 40% or 50% of the water doesn't come from the Garrett Park. Doesn't come from Garrett Park. It comes from the estates. That tells me very clearly that we have a case to make to get the county to help us solve the problem, and not only from an engineering standpoint, but from a financial standpoint. And we need to make sure that we do whatever we need to be in that position so we can appeal to the county for financial help or technical help.
And maybe we can discuss that in the next new business here.
Andrea, you said in your introductory remarks that there were 19 local municipalities participating? Because the resolution says 18, which is super duper minor.
Yeah,
And,
I'll check on that, yep.
I mean,
There's 19 listed in the beginning of that document. I probably used the
that might be
county's,
from,
I probably used the county's language here. That
Right.
might be what happened. So I think it should be
Yeah,
19,
not a hill to die on,
based
but
on how many were
I
in the
heard
document.
something different from what's in here.
I'll change it.
And the suggested amendment that I would make in the second whereas clause, and this is, again, my being fairly OCD about these things, to strike state and federal rules and replace that with federal and state laws and regulations. Because rules and regulations are the same thing, but they're not laws.
Which ones are you talking?
On the second paragraph,
Okay.
the citations in there, which I don't actually love, but I'm not gonna spend time correcting them. The federal laws and regulations are cited before the state law and regulations. So to be consistent, to put federal and state, federal before state, and to say laws and regulations, because
Because rules and
regulations are the same
are
thing.
not law, right.
So, anyway, that's my
Okay.
That's good.
correction.
Noted. All right.
So call it laws. Yeah.
Federal, to state,
State,
federal and state laws and regulations,
Okay.
because there's both
Okay.
cited in here.
But this does sign us up to do something. I mean, like, we'll have to come up with a plan.
No, it does not commit the town to anything, was the exact language from.
But it does allow us
Nor does
to
it
have the
present-
funding,
Right,
to
it's-
make requests for funding, if we
Which
have.
seems
to.
to be the relevant, the most relevant thing is, we need to do this so it's adopted, so that if and when we explore funding,
Right.
they say your first
Their plan.
criteria is, do you have a plan? We say, yes, we adopted yours.
Yes,
Yep.
Right.
that's exactly it.
Exactly,
Yep.
yeah.
And
Thank
this
you.
does say
Right.
eligibility for pre-disaster mitigation
Mhm.
grant funding. I don't know
Right.
if that means like the hurricane's
That's our
coming right
favorite way
now,
to handle
or
disasters.
if that means, let's start being proactive on stormwater, so when the hurricane does come,
Right,
we're not underwater.
yeah, mitigation. I don't know how there is it, yeah. Pre-mitigation, right. Okay, great discussion. Anything else? Good? Okay, would anyone like to
Your
make
doorstop.
the question?
Sure, I will move to adopt the resolution to adopt the Montgomery County Hazard Mitigation Plan 2018 as amended.
As amended. Okay.
I'll second it.
I'll second.
Who's second? Hans? Hans is second.
Okay.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Carried, thank you. Thank you for doing that, Andrea. That's great. Okay, we're on to new business on the agenda. First one is the stormwater proposals and task force. Councilmember Hans just gave a nice segue into this about the concerns we have at the end of Rokeby and Kenilworth, and more or less, it's actually 70% water from the town, 30% from the county, but the point is taken, maybe we can get the county involved. What we have now, just received today, I haven't even had a chance to look at it, is the study prepared by our civil engineers, Clark Azar, for the Rokeby Kenilworth area. Previously, they had provided concept drawings for mitigation, and they also had provided a study with proposed recommendations for the Claremont area, Claremont and Montrose. So we now have the two things we've been waiting for. We also have the as-built drawings that are up until the mid-70s that have water and sewer. We're not sure whether they do have stormwater, but back before the mid-70s, they used to be all combined. So we're going to be checking that. And therefore, I hope maybe this week or the end of next week, we really wanted to take care of the SRTS first, but we probably can get this out in the meantime to Hans and his task force to, review these two studies and proposals and the as-built drawings. We'd also like, if you, Hans, would like to bring in Clark Azar to just kind of review them, but maybe it's best first to distribute to the task force and let them, kind of look at it first and then get a meeting together with Clark Azar. That's kind of what I'm thinking.
Okay.
Does that sound good to you?
Yeah, I think it's really critical to get the counties involved, get the county involved from a standpoint of making sure that we understand exactly what their plan is, so we can be congruent with it rather than fighting against it.
Right. And also because these are significantly large cost
They're big dollars.
projects,
They're big dollars.
which we don't
And
have.
they're only gonna get bigger.
We don't have them we don't have sufficient funding in the budget. So, and we're already just a couple months away from the end of the fiscal year. I don't anticipate being able to actually do anything until the next fiscal year.
Yeah.
But maybe we can get something going in the fall, get the county on board too. There's a lot of steps we've got to take yet.
Yeah.
That's
I-
my,
I'd like to get a copy of the reports and the as-bills.
okay,
So would I.
could do that. All right. Okay, two other items under new business. As you all are familiar with the practice, I'm not sure about Dan, but, so there's two things. One is the question about a summer hiatus. We usually have taken a break, we didn't last year, where we have at least 1 month that we don't meet as town council. And the other item to consider is whether or not to have a town council retreat. Sometimes that's what's done in place of a town council meeting, but I open that to the council here to weigh in. The reason why we have to bring this forward by charter, we have to give a 2-meeting, advanced meeting notice if we're going to cancel a meeting. So if we're going to cancel July, we're actually making that statement, this meeting as, and June will meet that condition. But if we want to decide or, wait another and consider maybe August being the month to have the hiatus, you can still discuss it and we can come back and decide on, at the June council meeting. But it's only if we're gonna do it for July. We have to bring it up now, talk about it now.
So it's Monday, July 8th and Monday, August 12th are the two scheduled
Yeah.
meetings.
I like the idea of August.
Yeah, I do too. I mean,
Same.
who does anything in August, right?
When I first heard about it, I heard it was always August or not August. It was never July or August, but I don't know if that was ever codified. It was just tradition or misunderstanding by who told me. But
So it was July 8th or August, which one?
August 12th.
12.
12th, okay.
It's the second Monday.
All right, now, am I hearing, you're all still checking, some of you are checking calendars still?
I'd be in favor of taking a hiatus for the August meeting. It makes sense. People are out of town on
Yeah.
vacation. It's hard to
Right.
get everyone together when
I would too.
people have.
I'm good with that, too. I'm out of town, so
So there you go.
Yeah, works.
I won't be attending regardless. I'd be happy
Oh,
to
let's
have us be on.
let's cancel that meeting. Don't give them a week off.
Okay, so what piggybacks onto this is a town council retreat. It doesn't always happen, and we do have the same council. I mean, it's definitely useful when we have new council members, but
And what, when you say retreat, is this like a week in the woods? What sort of thing?
No, I
learned this the hard
I
way.
just,
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
It's the beach, Dan.
the zip lines, I was
She's
thinking.
got the music going already.
It's Trust Falls and,
I love it.
the off-
Malta team building. So no, is
It
this
could be anything, typically, it has been reviewing, assignments, that the town office delegates, because they're administrative functions that we delegate to council members, and the choice of council members taking on what assignments they would like. That's usually one of them. Maybe any goals for the year.
But so in the structure of like, just sort of a full day working session?
Or
We're not
an
actually,
session,
No,
We
or
don't-
even 2 hours, I mean, I
okay,
think.
but we're not actually going anywhere.
No, sadly.
No.
No.
I was disappointed the last time,
do.
the first time I did it, because we
I
didn't go
just-
anywhere.
Whatever
We
the
sat in here.
protocol is.
So,
We could go to Black Market, but it would be self-pay, right?
Well,
We
then
can go to your house.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm in support of it. I think it would be a good thing to be able to have discussions and get through some stuff, and it could, I'm happy to invest that time, because I think it could make these meetings more efficient.
I would be
Okay.
fully supportive of it, the work session.
So, we talked about the hiatus being August, and you're being away. When would we have this, we could have it later in July.
Or could it be earlier? I guess the first time I heard about this whole process when I first was elected, I was told it was either August meeting or no August meeting, and that gets voted on, and then that retreat, which I misunderstood to be like a retreat where you actually go somewhere and do some sort of sessions to work as a group. That wasn't really that. It's sitting in here talking about our goals, which I think would be a valuable thing to do. But I guess we tried to do it the first year, I think, as close to the election as possible, so we had that whole, kind of like stepping stone to work off. I think it would be valuable to talk about all the different things everybody has in mind for this coming year, and then discuss it out and how we might be able to achieve those.
So maybe in June.
So where are we going
But
with that?
it has to
I'm,
be
I'm wondering if
after,
it should be June.
after
Bless
school ends. It is
Yeah.
crazy town between now and the time school ends. It's just,
When does school end?
June 15th, 14th, 15th. You're
Well-
right, 14th is the Friday.
I mean, there's a lot that we typically get ready for council meetings, and this is why usually it has occurred on the month that's off.
But
So what you're
August
saying is you'd like, we'd have a council meeting in June, then we'd have a retreat in June, and then we'd have a council meeting in July.
But
I
think it
would be
has
more
to
in
be a
favor of
full
Oh,
having
no,
a-
no council meeting.
Right.
Oh, yeah, it's council meeting.
I don't think it
Sorry.
has to be a full day. I mean, we
No,
can these,
no, not at all, but
like,
2 hours.
2 hours.
I'm
yeah.
thinking leaning towards the end of July might be, or we could do it in September after you've all had a nice break and had your thoughts, reflect on things and.
I mean, I think that, it would, it
'Cause
were
then we
best
have
done
July
quickly.
4th.
I know, but I tend to think that, then we're how many months into the new election calendar year, so, I mean, I take Dan's point that I feel like it'd be better to have some of those discussions just to regroup,
Right.
Oh, I think it's
sooner rather than later.
invaluable to have.
Yeah, so I would be happy to do it as long as we do it after school lets out.
Yeah, and keep it to a tight time frame.
That's my
Is it
preference.
possible to do that as a webinar sort of a thing, if it's difficult for us?
So, the end of June, we have the MML.
Oh, that's right.
It's
When is that?
also
Yeah.
so I think June is kind of busy.
Okay.
Yeah.
What week is the MML? I'm not going, so it's not in my head.
3 to 26, June 23rd to the 26th.
Okay.
Sunday or Wednesday.
Would it ever work to do it for a few hours before on the same afternoon as the council meeting? Like July 8th?
You were suggesting we meet during the day, in the afternoon before the meeting?
My preference would be to do it on a weekend sometime.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd rather.
Saturday morning or something like that.
Right.
Dedicated time, not related to any specific activity that has to do with town business, just do a work session.
I mean, I
And
realize
we can all
that,
come up with suggestions of what those should be.
Should we just put out a doodle poll and see
Sure.
what everybody
Yeah.
wants?
Is
That
a
works for
Saturday
me.
morning something that works for
Saturday
everybody?
morning would be good.
yeah, that's fine.
And then definitely, so we'd be looking at after July 8th.
Well, I think we could even, I mean, just throwing it out there, start looking June 29th and then just see how it goes from there. I mean, the
It's
6th
week
probably,
before 4th of July.
yeah, I
think
know,
that's
but, I mean,
not gonna work.
I'll
Won't
help
work
with-
for me.
I'll help you. I'm gone
work for me.
June 29th to
all
the
right,
7th.
never mind, let's
So
do
just
it.
for the doodle polls, I
Right.
can
Yeah.
save you to not put
Okay,
these dates.
that's
June
on there.
29th to July 7th.
That won't work.
Yep.
So we'll look towards mid-July.
And what about July 7th, because then it's right before that council meeting, so if there's anything
Well,
that
but
comes
people
out.
may be
Sunday.
traveling for the 4-day, if you,
Sure.
I mean,
Yeah,
you
take the
know,
whole week.
if you take that.
Right.
We'll put a
Yeah,
doodle poll
let's do
out, after, any time after, from the 9th on, how's that?
Sounds good to me.
And we're thinking,
June 29th to July.
and we're thinking a 2 or 3 hour window, just so Andrea
Okay.
knows what to put on the
Okay, gotcha, I was wondering
2 to
if you were
3
here
sounds
for
right
the,
to me.
for the
2 to
town
3, so
council.
3 hours essentially.
Yeah, let's shoot for 2.
Okay,
we- we shot
we have
for-
to
I think
schedule 3 and
Yeah.
shoot
That's
for 2.
Stephen's
Exactly,
mantra,
there you
always
go.
2.
Yeah, because I think the first year we did it was like 4 hours we were here. But I think last year we were here probably 3. So,
We'll just keep on going down, we'll get to 15 minutes one of these days. Just for you, Steve.
Do we need to officially declare our summer hiatus, or are we down by straw poll, or what do we need to do? I forgot.
I think it's notice, it's public notice, that's all.
Okay, so we've all agreed that,
We've all agreed that it's
August.
August, so, you know, we're ahead of the curve already, since
Okay.
we now have an agreement, it sounds like.
Okay.
Okay, town updates, and I'm on the, at the top here, update on the SRTS project. So there's really only a limited amount of information that I am able to give at this point in time because we have not made the final selection of the lowest responsive bidder, nor have we made that recommendation in any formal form to State Highway, which is what has to occur as well, and that goes into a concurrence and award package that gets reviewed by the State Highway as well as federal. I don't know how much I'm repeating from last town council meeting, but we certainly have been doing a lot of research on several of the lowest bids. And there's information that we are finding that is a little disconcerting, and I can't give really anything more specific publicly because it's still procurement sensitive. We have not yet contacted any of the lowest bidders. That doesn't sound right. We have not yet contacted any of the bidders who are on the lower end of the bids. And we hope to make that contact this week and get some information back. And I have council members who will be working with us, Andrea and I, to review responses that we get back and make a selection that we would then proffer to the State Highway Administration, let them know. We sort of let them know already where we're leaning. And I'm sorry I have to be so vague, but we will let them know and then hope that we can still go ahead and put our recommended selection into the concurrence and award package, which is a formal package. And go from there. But I really can't give you any more information till we have a better idea who we're gonna be selecting. If anybody else wants to say anything or remind me of something I should say, I appreciate it.
No, just to add though that this really has been a very deliberate and informed process. Mayor Kaki and Andrea put a lot of analysis into the bid packages that we've gotten. There's a lot of due diligence being done, so it's not just throwing darts at a dartboard. This is a process that is being undertaken with as much scrutiny and attention to detail as is appropriate for a large expenditure of funds, most of which is not our money, but still, we want to make sure we're doing the right thing in terms of selecting the right bidder. So, I very much appreciate the attention and the research that's gone into helping inform all of the council members on where the packages stand, what they look like, what we should be considering in making this recommendation to SHA.
Yes, and I thank all the council members for your input. Every one of you. Everybody's been involved here and making very wise suggestions that we are taking to heart. Thank you, Jane. That's all I have. So next on the update list is Councilmember McClintock.
Yeah. So with respect to the Arboretum plan, and just generally the Arboretum, let's see, the Arboretum plan is still being fine-tuned. The committee has been putting a lot of thought into how to make it the best document possible in terms of usability. And we anticipate currently that it will be completed before the end of the fiscal year, and there will be a public meeting to present all of that. So no new updates except, stay tuned for further developments. And also there are 14 trees. I don't know if any of them have gone in yet, but there was a description in the May Bugle about these 14 trees that our consulting arborist picked to replace existing trees that had gone away for whatever reason. So these are all replacement trees, but our consulting arborist always does a good job at finding the best deals possible and finding the healthiest trees possible. And then of course our town crew is very experienced at putting these trees in. So it's nice that they're going in at this cool and wet time of year to have the best chance possible of getting well established, and if we ever do get summer heat. So that's all I've got there.
Can I have a follow-up question, Jane?
Sure.
Did I hear you right that your hope is to have this plan and inventory completed by the end of this fiscal year, and to present, the question is to present it to the town?
Yeah, there will be a public meeting sort of walking through
So,
what the inventory is, how town residents can use it. Everyone should know, but, will be informed that there are little tags on the trees
yeah.
that, distinguish that these are town trees, and here's a number, and you can refer to them. And yeah, so the plan is to have a public meeting to present the plan as this is the document that the town will use going forward.
When do you envision that being a separate meeting, like on a Saturday, much like Steve did with the charrette for the town hall, or just a piggyback here on a council meeting? Since we're kind of tight on the end of the fiscal
Yeah,
year.
no, I get that. I'll consult with Michael and Chris on that, but I would think that probably doing a separate meeting would be better, because I believe that it's in the contract that NRD personnel are going to come to help present it. So I think it would be better to give it the time it deserves, and to make it convenient for town residents to come. But I will talk to the committee about that and see if we can nail down anything. And if for timing reasons it needs to go after the end of the fiscal year, it's not the end of the world. But that was the original proposed time frame. But I know a lot of people are very interested in the trees. And I forgot to write down the date of the spring tree walk, but I've seen signs up for it.
Next Sunday.
Sunday the 19th at noon, meet at Penn Place?
Yes.
And
Post office, noon to 2 p.m.
noon to 2 p.m. And I have been on those, and that is always a phenomenal experience. So
This Sunday.
put on your comfortable walking shoes, though, because Phil will drag you up and down and around.
Jane, as a point of information, half of those 14 trees have been planted by the end of the day on Friday.
Oh, great.
So I'm just repeating what you said since you weren't at the mic. Half of the 14 trees were planted as of Friday. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Last Friday.
Great. Jean has a question.
Hi, Jean Horan, Cambria, representing the swimming pool, and that was my other question. We opened the pool in 11 days, so those trees need to find a home. I know I mentioned that to you.
Yep, I know. Yep.
She's here as
Yep,
the
sure.
liaison, I just wanted to.
Is that
They're
because
working
the
on it,
trees are,
Is there in the
Sitting
parking lot?
Pool parking lot.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay.
which is a very convenient staging area, but
Yes.
I do think the town crew is sounds like they're very diligently
Perfect.
getting those
Just
in the
wanted
ground
to
already.
mention it. Okay,
Right.
great, thank you. Great.
All right, thank you. And thanks, Jane. Communications, any update, Councilmember Simons?
We've had some good email dialogue. I'm hoping that before the next, before our next council meeting, we will have had an in-person meeting with the communications committee. And what I hope to focus on first with the group, or help the group focus on, however that works, is to discuss what we're solving for. Because there's some of the proposals, for example, the digital signage in the town hall, and I think even if it's just for me to get context so that I can relay it to the council and then, kind of share that information publicly. So that's my plan, and I'll ideally be able to give a more detailed update at the next meeting. But I think there's several good ideas. The committee seems focused on doing things that improve communication, so I'll look to make sure that we have clarity on the why, and then the what and the how, and then we can talk if there's funding needed, be it for the digital signage or anything else.
And I just want to remind all the council members who are liaisons to committees that in my philosophy as mayor is to let this be a resident-driven kind of forum, okay? Which I know it has been. And as much as I say that, everybody knows we have a real issue with the actual mode of communicating to town residents. And I know that's one of the communication committee's top priorities is to really figure it out and just let's get to one platform somehow, if it's possible. So I hope that can be an emphasis, if we're gonna emphasize.
Loud and clear.
All right, thank you. Okay, we have update on the town hall renovation and the historic preservation. So, Councilmember Paskowski.
So maybe I'll just go on the order I wrote them down. One thing, thanks for doing a shout out about the tour earlier. It was a very successful tour, and the committee was very happy with all that work and how it turned out, very energized by it, because it really started by a project of what's right on some section of town's history that hasn't really been written on. It started with Richterville, and it turned in the energy of making that tour. Now the energy is being shifted to the next, it's probably going to be tech built and other homes of that era. But so the committee was really pleased with it and looking to really broaden the awareness that was brought up from having that tour. Part of it in the discussion afterwards was the renewed request, and I think I've heard this about a dozen times over the last 3 years, was to get some sort of notice, and we agreed on that recently via email, to just have that committee get a notice if there's a permit or a variance application within town, just so if there's some historical connotation to it, that it may not have been realized that, it can raise a flag or raise a hand to say it. So sometimes the land use committee had actually, said like, well, I think the historic should weigh in on this. So, so we're just looking to just have that extra
Stephen,
look at things.
Could I ask that the historic preservation be in communication with the land use committee on any of those kind of concerns?
Yeah, that would be, that's the idea. Yeah, to have
there.
the chair of
Okay,
those
good.
two committees be able to talk if there's something that really needs to be discussed, get that discussion going. So, and it happened kind of organically before, but there were some other permits that came through, like where houses were altered greatly and nobody really knew it was happening until it happened. So there was no real way to at least have some input on it.
I think this is a good practice going forward.
Yeah, it'd be good. And then on the town hall, that's kind of getting re-energized too. So we were talking about some of the scoping options. So the plan is still to have scoping options with some cost associated, and have a next discussion on how to move all that forward in the fall.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. Update on archives, Councilmember Schultz.
So we're still looking for members for our committee. We've got at least a couple of names out there, I think. Mayor and I have discussed, so that's something we need to take care of. And then we also have one of the members has picked up some of the resumes, as I understand, for review for our contract archivist.
Yep.
So we're working along on that. And then jumping to my next one, traffic and parking. We've been working with one of our members to figure out exactly what we want for signs and where to put them, because we've kind of come up with a couple of updates in the interim. And I know that Andrea's already proposed a few signs and some locations. So we had a couple of comments on those too, but working along and trying to get something going here.
to add to that, or are you getting close to ordering and?
Yeah, I think it's, it just needs some
This week,
kind of,
maybe?
finalization. I think we're
Right.
pretty close though.
But, I mean, I think we're pretty close,
Has anyone ordered Andrea her star yet?
We have to get delegated approval
Are
to
we
the
still-
mayor
okay.
from the county
I
executive.
do have a hat with a star on it.
Are
Yeah,
we,
I do have two
is there a
towels.
holdup there, or is it the ball's in their court and they just
No,
haven't
no.
finished that?
No, I just haven't had a chance to get
Okay.
through it.
There were a few
Yeah.
little changes happening just at last November's election.
Mm-hmm.
And then they told, the county officials told us, all action items are stopping. And that just ground everything to a halt
Mhm.
until the new officials knew after the election would come in and
Mm-hmm.
we talk about it at least once a week.
Mm-hmm.
What did I want? I did want to give one other recognition to the Historic Preservation Committee for their generous donations of their profits
Thanks,
to
I
the
forgot that.
archives.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yes, $1,775.
And that's to go towards the salary of the archivist once we make that selection and once he is on board.
Or she?
or she.
Or
He-
she.
Or she.
Or she. Did I say he? Mhm.
From what I read,
Yeah.
perhaps I misunderstood, but from what I read, it wasn't for the salary, but it was for something to be determined beyond salary.
I didn't see anything specified, so I don't know if you knew something other than that.
I read it as for hiring the archivist. What is up for question is, what was up for question was how the money was going to be handled. And I think what we're planning to do is to create it as a receipt in the revenue and transfer it to a reserve account for the archivist.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm not sure that they stipulated that it had to be for the salary. I think they just wanted to make sure that it was used by that committee for that committee's work, but we
It
can
was
get them
in-
to clarify.
We'll
Well-
check, but it was in Nancy Walt's email, and we'll go back and check.
It'll go under 5.3.1. Right.
Eventually, but they asked it to go as under 16.1
But it won't
until
go
the
there yet.
archivist has come.
It's not gonna go there yet. It's gonna go into the reserves.
It's not
She
going to
said
use,
until we have an archivist.
Last page.
what?
Final page of the monthly report.
16.1, right?
No, it'd be
That's
just
the
the reserve account.
Yeah, the reserve accounts, the reserve, other reserves.
Okay, so it's not going to go under contributions to the restricted contributions, archives, donations?
It will go in as a receipt on revenues under restricted contributions, but it will not go on the operating budget until we have an archivist on board, So we're gonna hold it in the other reserves funds with the archivist, I think it's archives. It's an archives fund. Just like we have for trees and benches. Okay. Right, I also wanted to make one point, Phil, that you were working with Andrea. We had a couple of suggestions from residents close to Wells Park about signage for children at play. Slow down, so we're definitely pursuing that as well.
Right.
Great idea, so just want everybody to know that. It's much needed now that, who was it? Somebody said it was a destination park now? Wells Park is now a destination park. People are coming in from outside the town.
That may have been my kids, but I'm not sure.
Okay. Update on Strathmore pedestrian warning light. Councilmember Wagner.
Not much to report, if anything. The fact is that I've had several communications we exchanged emails. Most of them are coming from me to them, having to do with what's an update. And as of this evening, I hadn't gotten any feedback either by phone, and I left voice messages. And so I took the liberty of I just am under the impression that SHA and the county are not seeing the urgency that I'd like to see them exercise on this. The last email I got from SHA talked about doing a pedestrian survey in April, the end of April, and I said, no, come on, this is a pool-driven activity, we gotta do this survey of pedestrian traffic trying to cross Strathmore after Memorial Day, and preferably on a summer weekend. And I haven't got a response to that yet. So I took the liberty of contacting Jeff Wallstrid's office and saying, I want you to be on my radar screen, and I want you to see, I don't do anything yet, I want to, I don't want to go against what SHA are doing, but at some point I will say, Jeff, I need your help, and have him help us get this thing done. So that's where it stands.
Okay. Thanks for taking that initiative, Tom's. And we have Town Manager Fox on the Town Manager notes.
Yes. Okay. Okay, the April revenues, operations, and capital budgets are at expected levels, and total revenues and expenses are within projections. There were 2 new building permits that have been issued. One was for 10702 Keswick to enclose a second floor porch. The other was 4707 Argyle Avenue to add an accessory building greenhouse. As far as updates for town maintenance, recent maintenance improvements include the installation of a new shed behind Penn Place. And I just wanted to point out and thank council that town maintenance staff are very grateful for the additional storage as well as the safety benefits. The gutters were also added to the new roof on the shop building behind Penn Place. And then, as Jan already mentioned, town maintenance staff will plant the trees in the town right-of-way in the coming weeks, and residents who are getting those trees have been notified. And then my other update, I think that Phil covered this, and that's that, there have been a lot of applicants for the town archivist position. We've had over 50 candidates apply, and so we're all working together to select the top candidates for the interviews, and I think that those interviews will probably occur in the next 2 weeks. So hopefully this will move pretty fast from here.
And I'd like to thank the council for actually increasing that hourly wage. It may have had a lot to do with it, for the attraction of extra candidates. Okay. If there isn't anything else, yes, would you like to use the mic, please?
I'm Jean Horan, 4419 Cambria Avenue. I was watching this meeting from the comfort of my kitchen while I was washing my dishes tonight, and that's why I ran back over. So I may have missed this decision. On the budget, have you approved the $500 for the resident who wished to put the diversity circle together?
No, not specifically. We did approval of a major, well, it's a sub-line item in the budget. So it encompasses money for all other committees outside the formal town committees.
All right, because my ears perked up when I heard the discussion. Then I heard Hans talking about kind of a general fund here. And I just wanted to offer one resident's opinion that I don't believe we've had any particular resident in town who has come, in my recent memory, forth asking for funding from the town and has received it. Typically what the process has been is that a resident who wants to put a program together will come to money sources, Women's Club, Citizens Association, and they'll typically propose their project. And I know from the Women's Club perspective, we'll look at the project and see if it fits in with the Women's Club mission, which is typically to enhance the services that we provide the town. We've had book signings. We've hosted a wellness speaker last year. We've hosted a cappella groups for the knowledge and benefit of our residents. And typically what that means is the individuals will call us and say, we don't have the money to rent this space. If you sponsor us, we can use this space. And again, if it fits within our mission, we have gone ahead and we've allowed a small organization or an individual to come here and speak. We do the advertising and we work out the money in terms of refreshments and things offer money to an organization like the Neighbors Helping Neighbors Group. But I would suggest that the council think seriously about awarding money to individuals, because I think that opens the doors to many individuals asking for money. And I would like to suggest that those individuals chat with the other revenue sources in town, the two organizations that really bring in the most money. And then at this point, Stephen, I'm going to say to you that I do not know what the Citizens Association's treasury is. I know that the Women's Club has money to donate a bench for seniors. We've already purchased a bench. We bring in money through the Attic in the Street. We bring in money through progressive dinners and events like that. I do not know what your funding is. I know there are some neighbors who donate every year, others who don't donate every year at that January dinner. But I would strongly ask the council to seriously consider these individual requests. There may be another way for an individual to do something by asking the town organizations.
Wait,
I'm not saying that the Women's Club would endorse hosting a specific event.
can you clarify, Jane? You're saying consider that doing mini grants to individuals is not the appropriate way to go? That's what you're saying. Okay, I got it.
To individuals is the way to go.
Okay,
Okay.
I've got to
From
stop.
the town.
I have to interrupt, because this all is on me. This all, and,
I'm
and,
not looking
no,
at you.
no,
I'm
no, no.
talking to the council.
I need to re-emphasize how this got started, because it was not one person coming and asking for money. This was me. What happened here is that we got a new representative to step forward to represent the town for the Martin Luther King commencement ceremony planning, which we've always had a representative.
Correct. Chow.
And so Sangeeta is a new resident, and she eagerly stepped forward. And when she went to some of these meetings, came back, she said to me, well, I'm being asked if Garrett Park is doing anything, and we haven't done anything. And I said, well, what would you suggest? And we started just brainstorming. And it came out, well, yeah, all right, maybe some kind of a diversity circle. You know, we didn't know if it was going to be once a month or once a year, or, you know. So she gave it a try. I attended. I thought it was fantastic. It was so well attended. But I was very surprised that she had used her own money. There were a lot of materials and things that she provided. So I said, you know, maybe if we get this thing going, maybe the town can provide a little bit. Because this, to me, I was thinking of as a town-initiated diversity activity. But I've heard well from all council members. I understand, you know, I understand developing a policy. But I want to be clear that this is not one individual who came forward to ask for the money. This was me making a suggestion, and there were a couple people in attendance at this activity that she organized, who said, yeah, we love it. I'll even help Sangeeta coordinate. That's where it has been. It stopped. We haven't done anything more. And, you know, I think we also encouraged Sangeeta to go back. She's so new, but to go back and talk with the Citizens Association, maybe having an event like this once or twice a year would be great. We had such an incredible turnout. It was so much fun, and she's got all kinds of ideas across the spectrum of diversity, you know, to enlighten and get people more engaged and open to other cultures. It was fantastic. So anyway, this is all on me.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah,
So
I don't
let me
want.
continue just for a moment.
Okay.
I know Sangeeta, I know the resident we're speaking about. I probably didn't read a bugle that talked about this being under the auspices of a larger town sanctioned organization. What I did do was check the website that I was given when I could have RSVP'd, and the website that came up was a personal business website, which made me think, okay, and then I talked to my local councilman. They have not given me the information I needed, but the information that I took from our conversation was that this could be a slippery slope to many other residents coming with pet projects.
And that's not how it came.
Perfect.
Right.
And I'm saying that I do not believe that the Women's Club would rubber stamp every pet project that anyone in town wishes to do.
Right.
But we do have revenue. Women's Club is a revenue-producing organization. I can only speak for Women's Club. But I do know that we have town organizations that would entertain events. One of the recent ones I talked to is a neighbor who would like to do a Hanukkah celebration. And what I said is, in town, we residents come up with our projects, we get a small group together, we come up with a proposal, and then we just make it happen by calling and reserving space, or we talk to organizations that do these projects and see if we can get some help. But, you know, as an organization, we don't usually just do things because people ask us. There has to be some legwork from people who want to get things done. So anyway, that was my point, just to share the concern about personal. Okay?
Well
And
taken. Council has said the same thing.
What I'd love to see is anything coming out from that resident being under the auspices of the Martin Luther King, because I had no clue that she was our next
So,
generation.
I actually spoke to her about that, because I didn't see that until after the fact.
Okay.
And probably should have seen it first, because I know she had sent it in for us to look at. It's just something I didn't get to right away, and when I did look at it, it was already out there, done, and I thought, and so I already talked to her. That was
And no disrespect
inappropriate.
to my fellow neighbor up the
Yeah.
street, up that street. I'm direct enough that I would certainly talk with that individual myself, but because I heard it was in the budget, or there was discussion of budgeting, I felt it was appropriate to come to you folks, so no
And-
disrespect to any neighbors.
And Jane, you may or may not have heard, you know, where the council wants to go with this is coming up with a policy. So
Yes.
like reserving this money, but figuring out going forward, you know, what are our criteria for doling it out, right? And it's not gonna be huge amounts of money, but for example, you know, one item or one potential place of donation that we've discussed is helping the Citizens Association with the 4th of July parade, something that benefits, you know, anyone in town who wants to come. So I think, you know, I think your point is well taken. It's certainly something we discussed last time, and I think, you know, with today's meeting, Dan has volunteered to take the lead on drafting that policy. So it would be good also just to have it in writing so everybody could understand like what the criteria are, what the process is, so that there's transparency.
So on that note, I would say, as a taxpayer who doesn't wish my taxes to go up, I would hope that the town council would talk to the Citizens Association board about the amount of money that they have and about the amount of revenue they're collecting each year. And if for some reason, because we've understood that the Citizens Association has been funded by all of us, and the real mechanism for gathering money was the town dinner in January. You came in, you got a $20 request for dues, individual or family. Many people in this room, I know your wife has sat here for years collecting money. I've heard feedback from some members of the board in the past, Stephen, that the money isn't coming in like it used to. One year I passed a hat around on 4th of July, and I said I would never do that again, because I didn't feel right about it. It felt like I was, you know, pushing people to donate. But I'd love to see the Citizens Association put together a financial plan before the council votes to give money to do some of those events. Because or the Citizens Association may want to change their charter on how they fundraise. Because I believe it is difficult to get money from each household. And I've also heard that when people are upset about what the Citizens Association is doing, they don't give money. And I know I personally didn't give money this year because I didn't come to the dinner. So I can give you and will give you money. But the fundraising, your faucet is kind of tight because you're at the mercy of everybody in town. I just ask you to really evaluate what the association has before you come up with plans on how much money you're going to use out of town funds to subsidize events.
Well, I think that would be part of the policy is, you know, a proposal, right? So, but, you know, I mean, without prejudging anything, because this policy is still to be written and the applications are still to come in, you know, I do think as a town, we have an interest in fostering that spirit of town. And, you know, not everybody knows about the progressive dinner as much as you publicize it, right? I mean, there are still people who live here but don't necessarily
We're talking about the Women's Club. The
participate.
Women's Club
Well,
is-
no, I'm just saying
is
for any
separate.
particular, no, I understand that. I'm not talking about the money. I'm just talking about the publicity and the support.
Which
and
may be a communications issue.
So I'm-
Which may
I'm
be a
suggesting-
communications issue,
and
but-
this is the wrong place to do it, okay?
Right.
But if you have a citizens association open meeting, I would be the first one to come to you as a board and say, I think you need to evaluate how you are raising funds from the individuals in this town. But since I don't see any statements from you and you're not obligated to give me a statement, financial statement, I don't know where you sit. But those are the questions I would encourage the council to ask the Citizens Association before you just simply hand money over.
Clear.
That's just good, that's good business, good governance. And I'm done, thank you.
And on a communication standpoint for the Citizens Association or anyone else, I think if we could involve, like the first thing I hear when I think is like, the best way to raise money is by email. So when we think about the town communication, like I think we then would need to publicize if we agreed upon that, because I think that's both the Citizens Advisory Committee and then what the council chooses to do. But if you look at the way most Americans give money at this point, the vast majority of money is raised by email. So, if you ever want to talk about that, I'm happy to help.
And let me just add to the communications issue is, I'm not sure if all council members know, but I am including all council members on the GPML, the Garrett Park mail list group with permission access to post town business whenever and however. You don't have to ask permission from the town office. You don't have to ask us to do it for you, because, you know, trust, we're gonna give you that access so you all can make your posts to the 489 emails that are on that group list. This is the GPML group list. And the same for the Citizens Association. Every chair of every committee will also have access to post, because we really need to figure this out. And it's, you know.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. All right. Wow, well, we're doing okay. And I think that's the last word. So, meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Hey, 2 hours. Thank you.
So what do we do with this?
If you want to, you need to send a blue sky with you.
What do we do with this? Just
Kathy, I'm not sure.
Oh, write our name in.
Way to email this to me.
write or sign?
I can email this to you.
Okay.
Because I don't know if we're.
I just been saving it.
Sign. Your name is there.